Four more players busted for gambling in the National Football League. One of them, Isaiah Rodgers, actually placed a prop bet on his Indianapolis Colts. So in essence, he did bet with, against, for, however you want to place it, his team. The point of all this is that is grabbing me is there are those who are covering the story, and they are really just shoveling it off as if it's no big deal. It's really something the NFL shouldn't worry about, fans shouldn't worry about. And my anger, my ire today goes to a reporter, and I am going to use the famous air quotes on this because when you listen to some of the comments, it's enraging to many of us who have covered the NFL for any length of time. Kaylin Kaler is her name. She writes for The Athletic, and she was the author of some of the stories on gambling. And her interview recently on CBS News, talking about the players and talking about it not being a big deal. This is just half of where I want to go today, Doug, to start off. And this simply has me enraged.
The NFL has one of the strictest policies on sports gambling when you look around sports. Actually, just yesterday, the NCAA, which had the strictest policy, they had a zero tolerance policy on sports gambling with players. They amended their policy to make it much more relaxed and the consequences much less severe because they were having a huge issue, just like the NFL was. So the NFL's issue, they are obsessed with maintaining the integrity of the game. So they think that any gambling that's taking place on work premises is unnecessary. And we heard that directly from an NFL executive last week. She asked in a press conference, if integrity is the number one mission, why would we have sports gambling on the premises? So that is kind of the root of their philosophy on the sports gambling policy. But as we've seen, as you mentioned, Jamison Williams and Stanley Berryhill, neither of them were betting on the NFL. Neither of them were threatening the so-called integrity of the game. So you do have to wonder if it's really worth punishing them for 6 games, which is a significant chunk of the season.
The stunning amount of bullshit from Kaylin Kaler on this whole issue is just frightening. Oh, so the NCAA says it's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about it. They've actually got it right because the NCAA makes billions off gambling, which we will get to from the NFL as well. That's part of the dichotomy here. But the fact that she says they're obsessed with integrity. What the fuck? If you don't have integrity in your game, how do you then move forward without the fans knowing that the players aren't out there screwing around and trying to fix the games? Doug, this is incendiary at this point, how somebody can be so lacklusterly foolish in dealing with this issue of gambling by players.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to Pete Rose and how big of a deal that is and still is to this day, even though sports betting has become wildly legal and not just legal, but the biggest problem I have is that it's very much endorsed by pro franchises, teams, leagues, whatever. And hey, I'm okay with that because I understand, especially being in the industry where we are, how much money is pouring into sports because of sports betting. Quite frankly, in the pandemic, sports betting kept lots of media companies alive, but we're media companies. We're here to report and talk and BS and whatever. But if you're a player and you have the ability to change the outcome of a game, not just for the integrity of that game, but I'd take it a step further and say you're changing the integrity of someone else's bet. If we want to talk about why sports betting can really flow in a lot of different directions that's bad, if you're betting on something, whether it's good or bad to happen, not only are you messing with your own game, but you're telling all the sports bettors out there, you actually didn't have control of this bet. No one does. But to find out later, you're going to lose because I wanted to win mine. And that's a scary thing too. And
but what you're talking about here, this inclusion of these tart reporters out there who don't know shit from shinola about what actually goes on in the game, and they pick up a couple of ideas from players who are giving them things anonymously. What you're saying is correct. That is the point. Because if you have players on the inside who are altering the game in any way, shape, form whatsoever, and Isaiah Rodgers placed a prop bet on one of the running stats for the Indianapolis Colts. He placed the bet. How do we know that he wasn't part of telling other players to get involved in the bet? That he didn't alter his play? That somebody else didn't alter the play? The fact that we've got morons and idiots out there who claim to know the game and know the sport who are saying it's no big deal, the integrity is not a big deal at all, is frightening. Not just, and I think your point's well taken, not just to the individual fan, but to the gambler themselves. You're changing things from the inside.
Yeah, and I think, guys like you and I are sports purists. I would like to think that every game ever played is being played by two opponents, both of who want to win for all the right reasons. They have nothing other than the goal of winning. I want to believe
which we know is bullshit.
Is not true, and I think especially if you've been in this industry for long enough, you understand that there's a lot of things in play in especially professional sports and college sports, as you mentioned earlier. I want to believe that, but I think if you start taking additional steps, and the fact that the NFL wasn't in Las Vegas for so long because it was too close to the Strip, and now they are, and now I just used the Denver Broncos as an example. I think I know there are multiple betting sponsors tied to the Denver Broncos. They've got this app lounge and this book common area, and they've got a sponsorship with one of the casinos in Blackhawk that's tied to the Broncos and a betting company. And I'm not picking on the Broncos or those companies. I just think that there is a lot of blurred lines here. And I think if I am trying to defend the players, which I'm not, my argument, if I was a player, was, hey, wait a minute, you guys are making billions on this industry. Why is it a problem that I participate in it? And I'm not defending them in that stance, but I think that would be my retort if I was a player and I was losing revenue from 6 games or half a season or whatever the case might be. My argument would be, look, you guys are the ones that are bringing this into our living room, not me.
Okay, let's stop there. You bring up a good point to move forward here, because while I'm excoriating a reporter for basically saying some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life when it comes down to this subject, completely ill-educated, we do have to also say on this side that the NFL are the ones who got in bed with the gamblers, in bed with the casinos. They're the ones who've done it. They're the ones making millions and billions of dollars on gambling. It's not going to go away. So it does bring up that point that if you're the NFL, you're in bed with the enemy. And you and I, both as guys who've been doing this for a long time, there were times on sports talk radio, I couldn't even mention the word odds or over-under. Right. It was complete. Program director said, do not talk gambling. But now, of course, everybody does, because, hell, most places are sponsored by gamblers and casinos and places like that. But the NFL's in bed. They're going to make their millions. The gamblers are going to make their billions along with this as well. So they're in a real bind here. I mean, they've decided that they have to punish players, yet you basically let the wolf into the chicken coop here. And how can you then settle it and separate it? And I think it's possible, Doug, but that's why leagues like the NFL have to be a lot more cognizant of what goes on with their players and their coaches and their front office people. You've now got to make sure that you are as squeaky clean as possible, because the first instance, here we go, guys busted for gambling, and Isaiah Rodgers on the property, gambling on the Colts. Immediately, when it comes down to the regular fan, your credibility goes right out the window.